The road is open, the future is not.
Freight. Part 1. The Crash. The white truck had no business being memorable. It was just a transport truck rolling west through the late afternoon glare. A clean rectangle of white cab and white trailer. No logo. No company name. No faded decal ghosts where a name had once been peeled away. No hazard placards. No phone number stenciled on the rear doors. Even the license plate looked wrong from a distance. Too plain. Too new. Like an idea of a plate instead of a real one. The interstate stretched through dry country with a kind of empty authority. Heat shimmered over the asphalt. Yellow grass lay flattened against long fencing. The sky was a hard, colorless blue, making every shadow look sharp enough to cut skin. Inside the truck, the driver sat rigid behind the wheel. Both hands stayed fixed at 10 and 2. He wore a white button-down shirt without a patch or badge, and a dark tie pulled too tight at the throat. His face was pale with the strain of a man holding himself together through repetition alone. Every few seconds, his eyes flicked toward the black case bolted to the passenger side floor. It was no larger than a briefcase, matte black, no markings, only a recessed panel with a single green light pulsing softly, steadily, as if keeping time with something far away. The driver looked at the case, then at the road, then at the clock on the dash. He had been told not to stop, not for police, not for weather, not for mechanical failure, not for civilian interference. A calm voice in an earpiece he was no longer wearing had repeated the instruction 3 separate times before departure. Now the ghost of that voice lived behind his eyes. Maintain route integrity, avoid contact, deliver freight. The truck stayed in the right lane and held its speed. 3 vehicles behind, Cal Rusk slapped the heel of his hand against the steering wheel and leaned on the horn. "Come on," he shouted at the windshield. "Move!" His voice vanished beneath engine noise and the thin rattle of loose change in the cup holder. He drove a battered charcoal pickup with a cracked side mirror, a sagging headliner, and fast food wrappers on the passenger seat. The dashboard clock glowed 5:08. His phone buzzed against the console, lighting up with a message he did not read. Cal had spent the last hour collecting reasons to hate the world. The line at the gas station had been too long. The kid at the register had smiled while getting his total wrong. He had spilled coffee on his jeans pulling back onto the highway. His ex-wife had left another voicemail about money. The AC in the truck worked only when it felt like it. His head hurt, his jaw hurt. Even the sunlight seemed personal. Now there was this white truck in front of him, sitting in the lane like it owned the road. He flashed his brights. Nothing. He leaned on the horn again. Nothing. He swung into the left lane and surged up alongside the trailer. For a few seconds, he stared at the blank white wall moving beside him. No name, no insignia, no nothing. "Who the hell drives a ghost truck?" he muttered. He accelerated until he was level with the cab. He expected the driver to glance over, maybe gesture apologetically, maybe at least acknowledge that another human being existed in the lane beside him. The driver never turned his head. That, more than anything, lit the fuse. Cal dropped back hard, jerked the wheel, and cut in behind the trailer with only a few feet to spare. His pickup bounced once. The rear doors of the trailer loomed above him. Flat, white, anonymous, infuriating. He hit the horn again. A short distance back, Jared Teague saw the whole thing unfolding and eased his foot off the gas. "Wonderful," Claire said from the passenger seat. Jared glanced at her. "Yeah." They had been on the road for almost 2 hours in Claire's compact SUV, heading home beneath a sky that had seemed harmless when they started. The air inside the vehicle still carried the faint paper and sugar smell of the bakery box sitting unopened in the back seat. Claire had one knee angled toward the dashboard, shoes kicked off, a half-finished bottle of water rolling lightly near her feet. She watched Cal's pickup dart around the truck and shook her head. That guy's going to kill somebody. Jared put a little more distance between them and the vehicles ahead. I know. You know what that truck looks like? What? Like a hospital appliance. Jared gave the white trailer another look. She was not wrong. There was something sterile about it. Too clean, too smooth. Like it had never seen weather. Never backed into a loading dock. Never carried anything as ordinary as produce, paper goods, or furniture. No logo, Claire said. Maybe military? No markings at all? That's weird. It's probably something boring. Claire kept looking at it. That doesn't feel boring. Up ahead, on the shoulder, Officer Dana Klein sat in her cruiser with the engine running and the driver's side window cracked just enough to let the heat escape. She had finished a routine motorist assist 15 minutes earlier and was updating notes before heading back toward town. Her sunglasses were on the dash. Her hair was pulled back tight enough to give her face a permanent look of concentration. When the horn blasts reached her, she looked up. She saw the white truck first, then the pickup slashing around it, then the compact SUV falling back in obvious self-preservation. Dana sighed once through her nose. Come on. She set the notepad aside and pulled onto the shoulder lane. The highway was mostly clear. If the pickup kept acting stupid for another 30 seconds, she could close the gap, light him up, and end the whole performance before anyone paid for it. Up ahead, Cal swerved left again. He drew even with the cab and shouted at the driver through his closed window, face red, mouth wide. One hand thrown up in a furious demand for acknowledgement. Again, the truck driver did not turn. Cal's expression changed. It was not just anger anymore. It was outrage at being refused. The strange, childish fury of a man who felt invisible and could not bear it. He stomped the accelerator, shot ahead of the truck, then jerked right into its lane. Too close. Jared sucked in a breath. Idiot, Claire said. Dana's hand hit the switch for the overhead lights. Blue and red strobes burst alive across the highway. At nearly the same instant, Cal slammed on his brakes. The truck driver reacted fast, too fast, as though he had been waiting for impact since the start of the route. The truck's brakes screamed. White smoke blasted from the tires. The cab dipped violently. The trailer shuddered behind it, its weight surging forward with sick, unstoppable momentum. For one heartbeat, everything held. Then the trailer began to swing. Cal glanced in his rearview mirror. Too late, he seemed to realize he had misjudged the size of the thing behind him. He tried to accelerate away. The truck's front bumper clipped the left rear corner of his pickup and spun it sideways across the lane. Dana hauled the cruiser toward the median. Jared grabbed the wheel with both hands. Claire braced against the dashboard. The white trailer fishtailed once, twice. Then it jackknifed. The truck folded in on itself with horrifying grace. The cab snapped left, slammed into the guardrail, bounced, then skidded broadside across the interstate. Cal's pickup disappeared beneath a shower of sparks and twisting metal. Jared hit the brakes hard enough to lock them, but there was nowhere to go. The SUV struck debris, lurched sideways, and clipped the back edge of the spinning trailer. Claire's shoulder smashed into the door. Jared's head snapped forward. Glass burst somewhere behind them with the bright, crystalline violence of a light fixture being dropped down a stairwell. Then came the real sound. The trailer hit the concrete drainage structure at the side of the road and split open. Not exploded. Opened. The rear section peeled apart along a seam that should have held. White metal sheared away from white metal in a long shriek that echoed across the highway. The cab crumpled inward against the barrier. The windshield imploded. The driver disappeared behind a fold of steel and shattered safety glass. The world stopped moving. The silence that followed was not total. Engines ticked. Steam hissed. Someone far away was screaming. One of Dana's emergency lights rotated silently across the smashed vehicles, washing everything in pulses of blue and red. The wreckage looked unreal. Jared opened his eyes to the smell of airbag dust, coolant, and blood. "Claire?" "I'm here." Her voice sounded dazed but whole. He turned toward her. A thin line of blood ran from her hairline down past one eyebrow. She touched it, looked at her fingertips, and stared. Jared sucked in a breath that stabbed under his ribs. His shoulders screamed when he tried to move. "You okay?" "I think so." Claire blinked hard and looked past him through the fractured windshield. "Jared." He followed her gaze. The trailer's torn interior was exposed to the fading sunlight. Inside, black steel cradles lined the length of it. Each one held a smooth, white cylinder about the size of a coffin stood on end. They were secured in place by restraint brackets and shock foam, immaculate even now, as if the freight itself had remained composed out of contempt for the crash. There were no labels on them, no warning symbols, no barcodes, no manufacturer names. Nothing but small serial markings printed in thin black type near the bases. One of the cylinders near the rear had ruptured. A crack ran diagonally across its surface. From it leaked a pale vapor so fine it barely looked real. It poured downward rather than upward. It flowed low over the trailer floor and spilled onto the highway in slow, graceful folds. Not smoke, not steam. It moved with the eerie intention of something searching for level ground. Claire's face tightened. "What is that?" Before Jared could answer, Officer Dana Klein was already out of her cruiser and running. She reached Cal's pickup first. The driver's side door was buckled inward. The windshield was starred white with impact. Cal himself was slumped over the wheel, blood streaking one side of his face. Dana yanked at the door handle. It tore free in her hand. "Dispatch, Major MVC, westbound," she barked into her shoulder mic. "Multiple vehicles, multiple injuries, possible hazardous material involvement. I need fire, EMS, and hazmat." She stopped speaking for half a second as she looked toward the torn trailer. "Send hazmat, no visible placards." A voice crackled back, tinny and confused. "Unit 12, advise cargo class." "I don't know." She moved to the cab of the truck and looked in. The driver was dead. There was no question. His chest had been crushed by the steering column. A fan of bright blood had dried already across the collapsed interior. His eyes were open, but empty. No wallet lay on the dash. No paperwork folder. No bill of lading tucked in the sun visor. No emergency response guide on the floor. Only a white card near his knee. Blank on one side. Marked on the other with a black triangle enclosing an open eye. Dana stared at it for one confused beat, then turned away. "Ma'am." Claire was forcing her passenger door open, trying to climb out. "Stay in the vehicle," Dana shouted. Claire pointed toward the trailer. "That thing is leaking." "I know. Stay put." Cal's pickup creaked once. The driver's side door shoved outward from within. Dana spun. Cal Rusk unfolded himself out of the wreckage like a man getting up too quickly from a deep sleep. Blood ran from his temple and down along his jaw. One sleeve was torn nearly off. He blinked into the flashing light, expression unfocused. Then he looked at the white truck with naked hatred. "You son of a bitch," he slurred. "Sir," Dana shouted, "stay where you are." He ignored her. He staggered into the lane, one hand out for balance, boots scraping broken glass. His body swayed once, then steadied. The pale vapor had already reached the roadway between him and the ruptured trailer. It spread low and thin over the asphalt, like frost forming in reverse. "Sir, stop." He kept walking. Jared, half hanging from his seatbelt, watched through the ruined windshield as Cal crossed the lane line and stepped into the mist. At first, nothing happened. The vapor curled around his boots and calves. Too delicate to fear, too quiet to notice unless you were already watching it. Cal took another step. His shoulders squared as if he were preparing to start yelling again. Then he stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. His head tilted slightly, as though listening to someone standing just behind him. The blood on his face looked almost black in the rotating police lights. His mouth opened a little. His nostrils flared. Every sound on the highway seemed to recede. Dana took one cautious step toward him. "Sir?" Cal turned his head an inch. No more than that. When he spoke, his voice was softer than anyone expected. "I can hear it." Claire gripped Jared's arm so hard he nearly cried out. "Hear what?" Dana asked. Cal looked toward the torn trailer, toward the cracked white cylinder still breathing its pale, invisible freight across the road. For the first time since the crash, he smiled. "It opened," he whispered. "It opened because I made it open." Then he drew a long, trembling breath, and the fog entered him like it had been waiting its turn. Part 2. No Manifest. Cal Rusk stood in the vapor and listened. That was how Dana Klein would remember it later, though memory had already begun to become unreliable. Not the crash, not the torn-open truck, not the blood on the asphalt, not the dead driver folded into the cab. She would remember Cal standing there, perfectly still, as if the ruined highway had become a church and he was the only one hearing the sermon. "Sir," Dana said, keeping her voice even, "I need you to step away from the trailer." Cal's smile widened slightly. The pale vapor moved around his legs in thin, low streams. It did not rise. It did not disperse in the wind. It clung to the road surface and found the shallow places in the pavement. It collected in cracks, curled along paint lines, slid beneath crushed metal as if the highway itself had been designed to carry it. Dana took another step forward, then stopped. Training had its own voice. It spoke quietly but firmly from somewhere below panic. Unknown cargo, no placards, visible release. Isolate, deny entry, wait for hazmat. But Cal was injured, exposed, moving. Behind her, Claire had gotten her door open despite the warning. Jared was still pinned partly by the seatbelt, one hand pressed against his ribs. "Ma'am, stay back," Dana shouted without turning. Claire froze with one foot on the pavement. Cal inhaled again. His chest rose too slowly, too deeply, like bellows being worked by careful hands. The veins in his neck darkened beneath the skin. Not blue, not purple, a dull gray-black. They formed straight branching lines before fading again. He blinked. When his eyes opened, his pupils had narrowed into sharp, vertical slits. Dana's hand moved to her radio. "Dispatch, I need everyone staged uphill and upwind. No one enters the release area. Repeat, no one enters until hazmat identifies the cargo." The reply cracked with static. "Unit 12, confirm release material. Unknown. Can you identify markings? No. Placard? No. Shipping papers? Not yet." There was a pause on the channel. "Unit 12, check cab for manifest." Dana stared at the cab. The driver's body was barely visible through folded metal and glass. "No manifest visible," she said. Another pause. Then dispatch came back quieter. Unit 12, say again. Dana looked at the split trailer, at the white cylinders, at the vapor moving over the asphalt. No manifest, she repeated. Cal began laughing. It was not loud. It was worse than loud. A small, breathless chuckle from someplace in him the crash had opened. He lifted one hand and studied his fingers as though seeing them for the first time. Cal, Dana said, though she had not known his name until she saw the cracked registration card hanging from his visor. Listen to me. You've been in an accident. You need medical attention. Step toward my voice. He turned to her. For a moment, she saw ordinary pain in his face. Fear, too. Beneath the anger and blood and whatever had entered him, Cal Rusk was still there, trapped behind his own expression. Then his face relaxed. It's under the road, he whispered. Dana felt the hairs lift along her arms. What is? Cal pointed at the pavement. The old way. Then his knees buckled. Dana moved before she could stop herself. She crossed into the edge of the vapor, hooked him under the arms, and dragged him backward across broken glass. The mist folded around her boots. For 1 second, cold passed through the soles into her feet, not like temperature, like information. Her vision flashed white, not bright. White like a blank page. Then sound came rushing back. Sirens approached from the east. The first ambulance arrived 6 minutes after the crash. By then, Dana had established a rough perimeter with her cruiser, road flares, and a lot of shouting. It was not enough. It could never have been enough. Cars had already stopped. Drivers had already climbed out. Someone was filming. Someone else was praying loudly near the median. 2 men from a work van had tried to help Jared out of the SUV before Dana ordered them back. The paramedics came in fast, carrying bags and boards and the brisk competence of people who believed the world still followed recognizable rules. Possible hazmat, Dana warned them. Unknown vapor from the trailer, no placards. Keep back until... Officer, that man's crashing, one paramedic said, already moving toward Cal. Cal lay on the pavement beside Dana's cruiser, shaking now. His limbs jerked in small, controlled bursts. Blood leaked from his nose in a straight line down the side of his face. It refused to smear, even when he turned his head. I pulled him out of the vapor, Dana said. The paramedic glanced toward the trailer. Chemical? I don't know. Smell anything? No. Burning eyes? Trouble breathing? No. The paramedic looked at Cal, then at Dana. Then he made the decision first responders make when a living person is dying in front of them. He knelt. That was the first mistake that looked like mercy. His partner joined him. Gloves snapped on. A mask went over Cal's face. Scissors cut through his shirt. Hands touched his skin. His blood. The dust on his sleeves. The pale residue clinging like pollen around his cuffs. Dana stepped back, chest tight. Fire arrived next. Then another ambulance. Then state patrol. Then a county emergency manager, running with a clipboard, breathing hard and asking questions Dana could not answer. What's the carrier? Unknown. Cargo? Unknown. Driver? Deceased. Papers? None found. There have to be papers. Dana looked at him. There aren't. The firefighters approached the trailer cautiously. One of them swept a flashlight across the cylinders. The beam passed over their smooth white surfaces and caught the only visible text. Small black serial markings printed low near each base. X33284 appeared on one cracked cylinder. The firefighter read it aloud over the radio. Marking on damaged cylinder appears to be X33284. The radio hissed. Then every channel went quiet at once. Not dead, quiet. Dana noticed because emergency scenes were never quiet. Even when no one was talking, radios breathed. Dispatch clicked. Someone somewhere requested status or repeated traffic or swore under their breath. For 3 seconds, every device on the scene seemed to hold its breath. Then dispatch came back. Command units, stand by for federal response. The county emergency manager grabbed his mic. Dispatch, what federal response? No answer. He tried again. Dispatch, identify responding agency. Static. Then a woman's voice Dana did not recognize said, all local units are instructed to maintain perimeter and preserve scene integrity. The emergency manager frowned. Who is this? The voice did not answer. Do not attempt to open additional containers. Do not transmit images of the cargo. Do not release scene details over unsecured channels. Dana looked toward the white truck. The driver was dead. The cargo was leaking. Cal Rusk was being loaded into an ambulance. Jared and Claire Teague were being assessed near their damaged SUV. Firefighters had already walked through places where the vapor had touched the road, and someone who had not identified themselves was already giving orders. Cal died at 7:41 p.m. in Trauma Room 2 at Mercy West. He should not have made it that long. That was what the attending physician said afterward, before she stopped speaking to anyone except the federal men in white protective suits. Cal had been unstable in the ambulance, then stable, then violently unstable again. His blood pressure collapsed twice and returned without intervention. His heart rhythm became unreadable, then organized itself into a slow, perfect pulse that did not match the electrical activity on the monitor. By the time he reached the hospital, his body had begun rejecting the language of injury. Bruises faded and reappeared in geometric patterns. His temperature dropped to 89 degrees, then climbed to 106 in less than 4 minutes. His skin gave off no smell, but every person in the room later described tasting pennies and rainwater. He opened his eyes while a nurse was cutting away the last of his clothes. "Sir, can you hear me?" the doctor asked. Cal looked at the ceiling. "Heavy is the door," he said. The doctor leaned closer. "What?" "Heavy is the door," Cal repeated. "Freight is the prayer." The nurse looked at the doctor. "Could be head trauma," someone said too quickly. Cal's right hand lifted from the bed. His fingers pinched together as if holding an invisible thread. Every monitor in the room flickered. For 1 second, the heart monitor did not show a rhythm. It showed a symbol. A black triangle with an open eye inside it, rendered in green medical light. Then text appeared beneath it. X3, 3284 active. The machine's reset. Cal smiled. A thin black line of blood slid from his nose to his upper lip. "Road anger remains the most reliable civilian ignition source," he said in a calm, sexless voice. Then his heart stopped. The monitor flatlined. The doctor called for compressions. No one moved for half a second. Then training took over. Hands went to his chest. Medication was called for. A crash cart came in hard enough to leave a dent in the wall. The nurse at Cal's head squeezed the bag and watched his chest rise and fall with obedient mechanical precision. But Cal was gone. His eyes stayed open. His pupils slowly widened until they became round again. One of the paramedics who had brought him in backed into the supply cart. "He said that at the scene," he whispered. The doctor turned. "Said what?" "Something about opening." The paramedic pulled off one glove. His fingers were trembling. There was a pale dust caught along the creases of the glove's wrist. He looked down at it. "What is that?" the nurse asked. The paramedic did not answer. He was staring at the dust because it had begun arranging itself into straight lines. At the crash site, the sun had dropped behind the low hills, leaving the interstate under a bruised violet sky. Portable floodlights had been set up. Their white glare made the scene look like a film set abandoned after a disaster no one had agreed to stage. The federal vehicles arrived without sirens. 6 black SUVs, 2 unmarked box trucks, 1 mobile command unit with no agency seal. They came from the west, from the direction the white truck had been traveling. Dana noticed that immediately. She did not like it at all. The people who stepped out wore clean white protective suits with black gloves. No badges were visible, no agency lettering, no department patches. Their face shields were mirrored, turning each of them into a walking reflection of the wreckage. The county emergency manager approached them with forced authority. "I'm incident command until relieved. Who's your lead?" One of the suited figures handed him a folded document. He read the first line. His face changed. "What is this?" "Transfer of operational control," the suited figure said. "Under whose authority?" The figure did not move. "Operational control has been transferred." "That's not an answer." "No," the figure said. "It is not." Dana watched the exchange from near her cruiser. Her boots felt cold, not wet, not numb. Cold in a way that seemed unrelated to the air. Another suited responder approached the trailer. 2 more began photographing the cylinders, not like investigators preserving evidence, like warehouse staff confirming inventory. One knelt near the cracked cylinder and placed a gloved palm against its surface, almost tenderly. Dana walked over. "I need to know what was released," she said. The mirrored face shield turned toward her. "You were first on scene?" "Yes." "Direct exposure?" "I pulled a man out of the release area." "Duration?" "I don't know. Less than a minute." "Skin contact?" "Through uniform and boots?" "Respiratory?" "I don't know." The figure tilted its head. "You would know." Dana stared at her own warped reflection in the visor. "I need to know what this is." "No," the figure said. "You need to be screened." Behind them, a team had reached the truck cab. They removed the dead driver with strange care, placing him not in a body bag, but in a rigid white containment shell. One of them retrieved the blank card from the cab floor and sealed it in a black evidence sleeve. Dana saw the symbol again before the sleeve closed. Black triangle, open eye. At the hospital, Jared and Claire were separated. That was the first thing that made Claire truly afraid. Not the crash, not the blood on her face, not even the pale fog spreading from the ruptured container. Fear had been present through all of that, of course. But it had been sharp and practical. The fear of impact, the fear of injury, the fear of not knowing whether Jared could breathe. This was different. This was administrative fear. A nurse told them it was precautionary. Then another person in white protective clothing told them it was necessary. Then a man with no visible ID told Jared to step through one door and Claire through another. "No," Claire said. The man looked at her with exhausted patience. "Mrs. Teague, you have both been exposed to an unidentified substance. Separation is temporary. Then identify yourself." He paused, not because he had not heard her, because no one had asked him that yet. "I'm part of the response team." "What response team?" "Mrs. Teague." "What agency?" Jared touched her arm. His face was pale with pain. "Claire." She looked at him and saw that he was trying to calm her down because he needed her calm. His left arm was in a sling. A dark bruise was rising along his collarbone. He looked older than he had that morning. The man gestured toward the door. "Temporary," he said again. Claire leaned close to Jared before they pulled them apart. "Don't sign anything," she whispered. Then he was gone. Dana was taken to the same hospital 2 hours later, though no one called it an admission. They called it processing. She surrendered her sidearm only after 3 separate arguments. She surrendered her radio because it had stopped transmitting anyway. She refused to surrender her body camera until a woman in a white suit told her it had already been remotely disabled. Dana looked at her. "That's not possible." The woman said nothing. Dana was led down a sealed corridor lined with plastic sheeting. Behind one set of doors, she heard someone sobbing. Behind another, a man laughed in short, regular bursts like a metronome. At the end of the hall, 2 technicians drew her blood. One of them looked at the vial after it filled, then looked again. "What?" Dana asked. The technician masked his reaction too late. "Nothing." Dana leaned forward. "What?" He carried the vial to the counter, set it beside a scanner, and waited. The scanner chirped once. The screen displayed a single word. "Delay." The technician swallowed. Dana saw it. So did the woman in the white suit. For the first time since Dana had seen the unmarked vehicles arrive, one of them looked surprised. In Trauma Room 2, Cal Rusk's body lay under a sheet. No one had moved him to the morgue. No one wanted to touch him until the federal team gave instructions. The nurse who had ventilated him sat on the floor outside the room with her back against the wall, staring at her hands. The paramedic who had noticed the dust had developed a nosebleed that would not clot. At 9:13 p.m., Cal's left hand moved beneath the sheet. The motion was small, almost polite. A nurse saw it through the glass and screamed. By the time the doctor came running, the hand was still again. On the monitor beside the bed, though no leads were attached to him anymore, green letters appeared across a black screen. Manifest not found. Then, the letters vanished. By midnight, the first official statement described the crash as a multi-vehicle collision involving a commercial transport carrying non-hazardous medical equipment. By 1:30 a.m., all public references to medical equipment had been removed. By 2:10 a.m., the state transportation cameras from the relevant mile markers were unavailable due to scheduled maintenance. By 3 a.m., the hospital's internal record system showed no patient named Cal Rusk had been admitted. By sunrise, the news said authorities had found no evidence of a biological release. By noon, every first responder who had touched Cal Rusk was dead or missing. And somewhere inside a sealed wing of Mercy West, Officer Dana Klein sat alone beneath fluorescent lights while strangers studied her blood through glass and whispered a word she was not supposed to hear. "Quasi-immune," one of them said. The other corrected him. "No, not immune." She looked through the observation window at Dana. "Delayed." Part 3, Inventory. Dana Klein learned quickly that the worst kind of prison was one where no one admitted you had been arrested. No one read her rights. No one charged her with anything. No one told her she could leave either. They called her room an isolation suite. But there was no bedrail release on the inside, no regular door handle, no window to the outside world. The only glass looked into a narrow observation corridor where white-suited figures passed at irregular intervals. Sometimes they stopped just long enough to remind her that privacy had become another thing requiring authorization. Her uniform had been taken. Her boots had been sealed in a transparent evidence bag. They gave her gray, disposable clothing and paper slippers that softened with sweat. Someone had cleaned the blood from her hands while she slept, though she did not remember sleeping. She woke with adhesive marks on her chest, bruising inside both elbows, and a bitter chemical taste under her tongue. A clock hung above the observation window. It did not move. Dana noticed after what felt like an hour. The second hand stayed fixed at 12, trembling slightly, as if time itself had been told to wait for further instruction. She stood and approached the glass. "Hey." A technician on the other side looked up from a tablet. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge." The technician's eyes moved toward her, then away. Dana rapped her knuckles against the glass. "I'm a sworn police officer. I want my phone call. I want my union rep. I want my department notified. And I want somebody to explain why my body camera was remotely disabled by people who won't identify themselves." The technician pressed something on the tablet. A speaker clicked in the ceiling. "Officer Klein," a calm female voice said, "please lower your heart rate." Dana looked up. "Excuse me?" Elevated stress complicates observation. Observation of what? No answer. Dana laughed once. Sharp, humorless. "That's the thing about you people. You answer everything except the question." The speaker clicked off. A minute later, the door opened. Two suited figures stepped inside with a rolling cart between them. On it sat sealed vials, a scanner, a tablet, and a stainless steel tray holding instruments Dana had seen in hospitals. And some she had not. Behind them came a woman without a suit. She wore a white coat over black clothing and carried herself with the cool efficiency of someone who had never needed to raise her voice to be obeyed. She was in her 50s, maybe older. Her face had that polished institutional smoothness that made age difficult to trust. A small pin shone on her lapel, a black triangle, an open eye. Dana looked at it and felt the cold in her boots again, though the boots were gone. "What agency?" Dana asked. The woman smiled faintly. "That question is becoming less useful. It's still the one I'm asking. My name is Dr. Elian Stroud. Federal? Attached. To what? To the response." Dana stepped closer. One of the suited figures shifted, ready to intercept her. She stopped just short of provoking them. "Where are Jared and Claire Teague?" "Alive. That wasn't my question." "It is the answer you are authorized to receive." Dana studied her face. "And Cal Rusk?" "Deceased. His body moved after death." Dr. Stroud's expression did not change. That confirmed it more than any answer could have. Dana felt a slow anger rise beneath her fear. It steadied her. Anger had always been dangerous in other people. In herself, she had learned to refine it into use. "You knew what was in that truck," she said. Dr. Stroud glanced at the technician nearest the cart. "Blood pressure rising." "I said you knew." "Officer Klein, you were exposed to an unidentified release during an unauthorized civilian breach of secured freight. Your survival pattern is statistically abnormal. That makes you medically relevant." "Medically relevant," Dana repeated. "Yes, not a witness. No, not a patient. Not primarily." Dana stared at her. There it was, clean and quiet. The truth, minus everything that might have made it human. Dr. Stroud picked up the scanner and held it near Dana's throat. The device hummed. "Any auditory distortions?" "No." "Visual geometry?" "No." "Compulsion to confess?" Dana blinked. "What?" "Compulsion to confess, submit, disclose, kneel, pray, or request instruction?" Dana said nothing. Dr. Stroud watched her carefully. Interesting. "What the hell is X33284? For the first time, the room changed. Not visibly. No one jumped. No alarm sounded. But the two suited figures went still in a way Dana recognized from traffic stops that were about to go bad. Dr. Stroud lowered the scanner. "Where did you hear that designation?" Dana almost answered. Then she remembered the firefighter reading the cracked cylinder over the radio. The sudden silence. The unidentified voice taking over the channel. The way the federal vehicles had arrived from the direction the truck had been traveling. as if they had always been just beyond the next hill. She smiled without meaning to. "From you," Dana said. Dr. Stroud's eyes narrowed slightly. "Officer Klein, your survival depends on cooperation." "No," Dana said. "My survival is making you nervous." Dr. Stroud held her gaze for a moment longer. Then she nodded to the technicians. They took more blood. This time, Dana watched the vial fill. It was darker than blood should have been, almost black near the glass. But when the technician lifted it toward the light, pale threads moved through it in branching lines. They did not swirl. They arranged. The scanner chirped. The technician's tablet displayed subject, decline, delayed expression, inhibition, window, unstable, utility, status, high. Dana read it upside down before the technician turned the screen away. Utility. That word stayed with her after they left. Not patient, not survivor, not officer, utility. The sealed wing of Mercy West changed overnight. By morning, if it was morning, the hospital no longer sounded like a hospital. The normal chaos had been stripped out of it. No overhead announcements, no squeaking carts, no visitors talking too loudly near vending machines, no nurses laughing at stations between disasters. Only filtration systems, footsteps, the occasional muffled scream, cut short not by violence, but by a closing door. Dana learned the rhythm of the wing by listening. Rooms opened every 40 minutes. Some patients were moved out. None returned. The loudest ones disappeared first. The quiet ones were visited more often. Somewhere down the hall, a man repeated the phrase, "manifest not found," until his voice became too hoarse to carry. Later, Dana heard the same phrase spoken in voices she did not recognize. That was when she stopped trusting sound. A meal tray arrived through a slot in the door. She did not eat. She drank half the water and used the rest to dampen the paper sleeve from her disposable gown. Then she pressed it over the small camera dome in the corner of the ceiling. The speaker clicked on instantly. "Officer Klein, please remove the obstruction." Dana sat beneath the camera and said nothing. "Officer Klein." Nothing. The lock on her door buzzed. Good, she thought. The first suited figure entered alone, carrying a replacement gown and a plastic bag. Dana was behind the door before it fully opened. She drove her elbow into the side of the figure's helmet. Not hard enough to break anything, hard enough to disorient. Then she hooked one foot behind the figure's ankle and shoved. The suit hit the floor with a heavy, padded thud. Dana was already moving. The corridor outside was colder than her room. Plastic sheeting lined the walls, stapled in overlapping layers. Temporary cables ran along the ceiling. Red arrows had been taped to the floor. Triage, containment, decon, command. Dana ran toward that one. An alarm began, but it was not loud. It was gentle and polite. A soft, repeating tone, like a seatbelt reminder in an expensive car. That frightened her more than a siren would have. At the first intersection, she ducked behind a supply cart as two white-suited figures crossed ahead of her. One was speaking into a headset. "Subjects from Vehicle 3 are stabilizing. Emotional suppression onset at 9 hours post-exposure. Pair bond remains unusually resistant." Dana's breath caught. Vehicle 3. Jared and Claire. The figures moved on. Dana turned the opposite way and pushed through a door marked "Staff Only." Beyond it, Mercy West ended. The hallway changed from plastic and temporary equipment to smooth white wall panels and black glass doors. The lighting became softer, cleaner, not hospital light, corporate light, museum light, the kind designed to make expensive things appear inevitable. At the end of the corridor, voices murmured behind a door left slightly open. Dana approached it and looked through the gap. Inside was a command center. Not large, not chaotic. 6 workstations. a wall of monitors, a table covered in maps, charts, and printed photographs from the crash scene. She saw the white truck from above. She saw Cal's pickup frozen in highway camera stills. She saw her own cruiser. She saw Jared and Claire's SUV circled in red. On one screen, a diagram showed the interstate for 30 miles in both directions. Traffic flow overlays pulsed across it, lane closure markers, construction delays, weather advisories, GPS rerouting projections, stress density estimates. Another screen displayed a list of names. Cal Rusk, expression complete. Marcus Hale, first responder, expression complete. Lena Ortiz, first responder, expression complete. Dana Klein, law enforcement, delayed. Jared Teague, civilian, progressing. Claire Teague, civilian, progressing/resistant pair bond anchor. Dana's stomach tightened. Below the list was the heading, X-33284 Civilian Behavioral Response Observation. Unsanctioned awareness event. Acceptable losses within model parameters. On the table lay a stack of documents stamped in red. Manifest not found. Dana picked one up. It was not a report. It was a template. Blank fields waited for dates, locations, casualty numbers, agency transfers, public statements, family notifications, media suppression tiers, and something called grief saturation. Near the bottom was a line that made her hand go cold. Containment objective, preserve response architecture, not subject population. Dana whispered the words before she could stop herself. This isn't containment. A voice behind her said, no. Dana turned. Dr. Stroud stood in the doorway. No suit, no panic, no surprise. Dana should have run. Instead, she held up the document. This is inventory. Dr. Stroud's face showed the smallest flicker of approval. Very good. Dana backed toward the workstation. You staged the response. We prepared for breach contingencies. You knew the truck might crash. All freight has risk. Don't call it freight. That is what it is. Dana looked at the screen again. The map, the traffic overlays, the construction delays. Cal Rusk's route plotted in yellow, the Teagues in blue, her cruiser in green. You manipulated the road. Dr. Stroud folded her hands in front of her. We arranged conditions. For a crash? For disclosure through pressure. Dana felt her pulse hammering in her throat. You used people. People are the only ignition source worth studying. She thought of Cal standing in the vapor, smiling through the blood. Road anger remains the most reliable civilian ignition source. You made him angry. No, Dr. Stroud said. He arrived that way. We merely gave his anger a door. Dana stepped back until her hand touched the workstation. Her fingers closed around the small data wafer plugged into one of the ports. Dr. Stroud noticed. Officer Klein. Dana yanked the wafer free. The room went dark. Only for a second. But a second was enough. She ran. This time the alarm was loud. Dana did not remember every hallway after that. She remembered pain in her side from where someone struck her with a baton. She remembered tearing free of a gloved hand. She remembered a stairwell door. She remembered her bare feet slipping on polished concrete. She remembered the data wafer clenched so tightly in her fist that its edge cut into her palm. She found herself in a lower service corridor beneath the sealed wing. Steam pipes ran overhead. The walls were unfinished. For the first time since waking in the isolation room, she saw something that had not been carefully cleaned. A maintenance alcove, a mop sink, a shelf of old supplies, a wall-mounted emergency phone with a cracked plastic receiver. Dana grabbed it. No dial tone, of course. Then she saw the old security station around the corner. A desk, a dead monitor, a charging dock. And on the floor beneath it, half hidden in dust, a hospital staff tablet plugged into the wall. Dana turned it on. The screen glowed. No network. She inserted the data wafer. Files appeared instantly. Most were locked. One was not. A video file. D-Klein _observation feed _live. Dana stared. Her body camera. They had not disabled it. They had taken it over. The file opened to show her own point of view from the crash scene. Cal in the vapor, the torn trailer, the cracked cylinder, the white-suited responders arriving without sirens. A live upload icon pulsed in the corner. Destination unknown. Dana understood then that hiding the evidence had never mattered. They had the evidence. They had all of it. They had watched through her from the beginning, so she did the only thing left that made sense. She recorded over it. She angled the tablet toward her face and spoke quickly. "My name is Officer Dana Klein, badge number 7142. I was first on scene at the westbound interstate crash involving an unmarked white semi-truck transporting unknown biological material designated X33284. There were no placards, no shipping papers, no manifest, and no carrier identification. The driver was deceased. Federal or private response units arrived with prior knowledge of the cargo and assumed control without identifying agency authority." Her vision pulsed. For a moment, the wall behind the tablet seemed to bend inward. Dana gripped the desk. "I found internal documents identifying the event as civilian behavioral response observation. The crash was not treated as an accident. It was modeled. It was expected." A thin line of blood dropped from her nose onto the tablet screen. She wiped it away with the heel of her hand. "This is not containment. This is inventory." Footsteps echoed at the far end of the corridor. Dana pulled the data wafer out and looked around wildly for somewhere to hide it. Then she heard someone crying. Not from the corridor. From the other side of the wall. She followed the sound to a narrow service window, painted shut but loose at the frame. Through the wire glass pane, she saw another room beyond, dim, lined with beds, occupied by the surviving civilians from the crash. Claire Teague sat awake on the nearest bed. Jared slept beside her in a chair, head bowed, one arm held stiff against his ribs. Claire looked up. Their eyes met through the dirty glass. Dana held up the wafer. Claire stood slowly. Dana shoved the window. It resisted. She slammed her shoulder into it once, twice. Pain flashed white across her side. The third hit broke the paint seal. The window opened 2 inches. Enough. She pushed the wafer through. Claire caught it. Dana wanted to say something useful, something comforting, something that would tell this woman how to survive. Instead, all she managed was this: "Don't let them make you calm." Claire stared at her. "What?" The footsteps were close now. Dana stepped back from the window. "Don't let them make you calm." A white-suited figure rounded the corner, then another. Dr. Stroud appeared behind them. Dana turned and ran because instinct still believed in distance, even when reason knew better. She made it 12 steps. Her legs failed all at once. Not from a blow, not from a wound. From instruction. Her knees struck the concrete. Her hands went flat against the floor. The blood from her nose formed a small black circle beneath her face. A sound began inside the walls. Clicking. Soft. Dry. Endless. Not insects, not machinery. Pens. Thousands of pens signing documents in rooms she would never see. Dana tried to lift her head. Dr. Stroud crouched in front of her. "I told them your inhibition window was unstable," she said. "But I admit, Officer Klein, you performed above expectation." Dana's veins darkened beneath her skin. Thin lines branched in clean angles from her wrists to her throat. Her vision filled with white symbols arranging themselves into language too large for her mind to hold. She thought of the highway, the heat, the white truck, Cal Rusk smiling in the fog, Jared and Claire behind cracked glass. She forced her hand over the tablet camera lying on the floor beside her, though she knew by then that someone was already watching from everywhere. Dr. Stroud leaned closer. Any final compulsion to confess? Dana smiled with blood on her teeth. No, she whispered. Then her mouth opened again. Something else used her voice. Delayed expression complete. Dana Klein died with her hand over the camera, trying to hide the truth from the people already watching through it. On the other side of the service window, Claire Teague stood very still with the data wafer hidden in her fist. Behind her, Jared stirred in his chair. Claire, he mumbled. What happened? She looked toward the glass. Dana's body was gone already. Only a smear of blood remained on the concrete. Dark, precise, shaped almost like a triangle before the lights in the corridor flickered and went out. Claire closed her fingers tighter around the wafer. Then she turned back to her husband and whispered the one thing she now knew for certain. They're not trying to save us. Part 4, The Freight. They moved Jared and Claire before dawn. At least Claire thought it was dawn. Time inside Mercy West had become theatrical. Lights dimmed when people were meant to sleep. Lights brightened when people were meant to answer questions. Meals arrived without relation to hunger. Clocks appeared in rooms where they served no function except to lie politely. 2 white-suited responders entered without warning and told them they were being transferred to a long-term observation facility. Observation, Claire said. The taller responder looked at her through the mirrored shield. Medical isolation community. Those are different words. They are authorized words. Jared stood slowly from the chair beside her bed. His face had taken on a gray softness overnight. The bruising along his collarbone had faded too quickly, leaving faint angular marks beneath the skin, like shadows cast by something inside him. Claire saw him sway and reached for him. I'm okay, he said. He was not okay. That was obvious. But the worst part was that he sounded almost convinced. They were led through a service corridor, not the main hospital. No nurses, no patients, no ordinary people witnessing anything that might later become testimony. The walls were lined with temporary plastic and black cables. Every few yards, cameras watched from ceiling corners. Claire kept Dana Klein's data wafer tucked inside the waistband of her paper pants, pressed cold against her hip. Don't let them make you calm. The words stayed with her. At the loading bay, an unmarked white bus waited with its windows blacked out. Claire stopped. Jared's hand tightened around hers. We're not getting on that, she said. One of the responders turned toward her. Mrs. Teague, refusal will increase restraint level. Restraint level, Jared repeated softly, as though tasting the phrase. Claire looked at him. His expression was distant, troubled, but not frightened enough. That frightened her more than the bus. She leaned close. Jared, look at me. He did. Tell me where we met. He blinked. What? Tell me where we met. A responder stepped forward. Mrs. Teague? Shut up! Claire snapped, eyes still on Jared. Where did we meet? Jared stared at her for a long second. Something moved behind his expression. Slow, submerged. Then he smiled faintly. Hardware store, he said. You were buying the wrong screws. Claire exhaled. I was buying the right screws. You were absolutely not. You followed me 3 aisles to explain anchors. You looked like someone about to destroy drywall. Her eyes burned. Good. Stay there. The responder took her arm. Claire almost fought, but Jared shook his head once. Not yet. They got on the bus. The ride lasted either 20 minutes or 4 hours. Claire could not tell. The blacked-out windows turned the world into engine vibration and breath. Jared slept against her shoulder. Twice, he whispered in his sleep. The first time he said, "Freight is the prayer." The second time he said, "The door prefers anger." Claire did not sleep after that. When the bus finally stopped, the air outside smelled wrong. Clean, but wrong. Not antiseptic, not chemical. More like rain that had been described to someone who had never stood in weather. They stepped down into a small town beneath a colorless morning sky. White houses lined both sides of a perfect street. Each had the same low roof, the same square porch, the same white curtains hanging motionless in the windows. The grass was green and clipped to an identical height. No cars sat in driveways. No mailboxes leaned. No weeds broke the seams of the sidewalks. No birds moved in the sky. No insects sang in the grass. The whole place looked freshly built and already abandoned by anything alive enough to be messy. A sign near the entrance read, "Harmony Medical Isolation Community, Temporary Care Through Structured Recovery." Below it, in smaller letters, "Your calm assists containment." Claire stared at the sign. "That's not ominous at all," she whispered. Jared did not laugh. Their assigned house was number 17. Inside, it was clean and furnished with the bland sympathy of a corporate rental. Beige couch, white table, 2 beds, 2 lamps, no mirrors, no sharp knives, no exposed screws, no cords long enough to knot. On the kitchen counter sat 2 bottles of water, 2 folded sets of gray clothing, and a tablet mounted permanently to a charging dock. The tablet turned on as soon as they entered. A calm voice filled the room. "Welcome, Jared and Claire Teague. For your comfort and safety, please answer the morning wellness prompts." Claire walked over and looked at the screen. "Do you feel afraid? Do you feel angry? Do you feel grief? Do you feel resistant to care? Do you remember the crash accurately?" Jared sat on the couch. "Maybe we should answer them." Claire turned. "No. They'll know if we don't. They already know everything. Then why fight it?" The words came gently. That was the terrible thing. Jared did not sound defeated. He sounded soothed. Claire crossed the room and knelt in front of him. "Because Dana died getting this to us." She pulled the data wafer from her waistband and held it up. Jared looked at it with vague concern. "Claire, we don't even know what that is." "Yes," she said, "we do." She went to the tablet, turned it sideways, and searched for a port. There was none visible. She nearly gave up before noticing the charging dock had a removable panel underneath. Her fingers shook as she pried it loose. Behind it was a narrow slot. She inserted the wafer. The tablet went black. For several seconds, the room was silent. Then the screen displayed Dana Klein's face. Her final recording played in fragments. Static broke her words. Some sentences were clipped. Others repeated twice, as though the file itself had been wounded. "My name is Officer Dana Klein. Unmarked white semi-truck. Unknown biological material designated X33284. No placards, no shipping papers, no manifest. Response units arrived with prior knowledge." Jared stood slowly. Claire watched his face sharpen, not fully. But enough. Dana continued. "The crash was not treated as an accident. It was modeled. It was expected. This is not containment. This is inventory." The file glitched. The image changed. Maps appeared. Traffic delays, lane closures, GPS rerouting, stress density projections, civilian ignition probabilities. Cal Rusk's name appeared in yellow, then Jared and Claire's in blue, then Dana's in green. Below the map, a heading materialized. X-33284 Civilian Behavioral Response Observation. Phase 1, Roadway Ignition Model. Sponsor, Authority, Illuminated Council/Open Eye Directorate. Claire felt something inside her go very still. There it is, she whispered. Jared leaned closer. Illuminated Council? The screen flickered again. A symbol appeared. A black triangle containing an open eye. Not ancient-looking. Not mystical in the way cheap books made symbols mystical. It was clean, vector-sharp. Designed for documents, badges, procurement portals, sealed orders, and conference room screens. Below it was a line of text. The Illuminati do not rule from shadow. They rule from authorization. The tablet shut off. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the voice in the ceiling said, "Unauthorized review of protected material increases recovery complexity." Claire looked up. Good. The front door unlocked. Across the street, every other door unlocked too. One by one, people stepped onto their porches. Survivors from the crash, hospital staff, first responders, people Claire did not recognize, all wearing the same gray clothing, all standing very still beneath the pale morning sky. A man 3 houses down began to weep without expression. A woman beside him whispered, "Manifest not found," over and over. But her voice was peaceful. Then every tablet in every house spoke at once. "Please proceed to wellness assembly." Jared reached for Claire's hand. His fingers were cold. They followed the others because there was nowhere else to go. The town square stood at the center of the community, though square was too generous a word for it. It was a circular paved space surrounded by white benches and low white buildings with black glass doors. In the middle rose a smooth concrete monument shaped like a narrow obelisk. No inscription, no flag, no memorial, just a vertical absence. The residents gathered in silence. Above them, the sky flickered. Claire looked up and realized it was not the sky, not entirely. There was a ceiling somewhere far overhead, disguised by projection. The clouds repeated in a slow loop. A bird crossed the horizon, vanished, then crossed again in exactly the same path. Jared saw it too. "Oh," he said softly. That single syllable broke Claire's heart more than panic would have. A door opened in the largest white building. Dr. Elian Stroud stepped out wearing her white coat and black lapel pin. No protective suit now, no shield. No need to pretend the infected were dangerous to her in any ordinary way. "Good morning," she said. Her voice carried through speakers hidden around the square. No one booed, no one demanded answers, no one ran. Claire wanted to scream at them. Then she felt it. A soft pressure behind her eyes. Warm, patient, inviting her to let go of the need to resist. She dug her fingernails into Jared's palm. He winced. Good, she thought. Pain was still theirs. Dr. Stroud folded her hands. "You have all participated in a necessary event. The language of catastrophe will be used outside this facility. Accident, exposure, outbreak, loss. Those words are useful for public grief. They are not useful here." Claire pushed forward through the group. "Was Cal chosen?" Dr. Stroud looked at her. Several heads turned. Claire asked louder, "Did you choose him?" Dr. Stroud smiled faintly. "Mr. Rusk was not selected. He was measured." "You made him crash the truck?" "No. We arranged a corridor of irritation, delays, compression, heat, obstruction, anonymous authority moving too slowly in front of a man who believed his anger was identity." Her smile faded. He completed the ritual freely. Ritual, Jared said. Dr. Stroud's eyes moved to him. All governance begins as ritual. Most people only recognize it once costumes are involved. Claire felt sick. This was a test. This was phase 1. People died. Yes, you infected first responders. We observed first responders. Dana's words returned. Inventory. Claire stepped closer. What is X33284? For the first time, Dr. Stroud looked almost pleased to answer. Not a virus in the simple sense. Not a weapon in the crude sense. X33284 is a compliance organism. It studies fear, grief, authority response, pair bonding, anger, submission, and the moment at which truth becomes less desirable than comfort. Jared's grip loosened in Claire's hand. She squeezed harder. Dr. Stroud continued. It lowers resistance by making obedience feel like relief. It does not conquer the mind. It persuades the body that surrender is home. Around the square, people began to smile. Small smiles, tired smiles, grateful smiles. Claire turned in horror. Jared was smiling too. No, she whispered. He blinked, as if waking from far away. I'm trying. I know. It's quiet when I stop fighting. I know, don't. His eyes filled with tears. I'm so tired. Claire held his face between her hands. Hardware store, she said. He breathed in shakily. Wrong screws, he answered. Yes, drywall anchors. Yes. Our first apartment had that stupid green kitchen. Yes. You hated the cabinets. They were horrible. You said they looked like soup. They did. He laughed once, weakly. For a moment, he was Jared again. Then the sky went white. The projection above them dissolved into a field of blank light. Across it appeared the black triangle and open eye. Massive, depthless, watching from nowhere. Every resident in the square lifted their face. Dr. Stroud spoke softly. Phase 1 grief response complete. The crowd repeated it. Phase 1 grief response complete. Claire did not. Jared tried not to. His jaw trembled. His throat worked. The voice from the speakers continued. Phase 2, obedience modeling may begin. The crowd repeated it. Phase 2, obedience modeling may begin. Claire wrapped both arms around Jared and held him as tightly as she could. Something was happening to their hands. At first, she thought he was squeezing too hard. Then she looked down and saw that their fingers had begun to blur where they touched. Skin softening, boundaries loosening, not melting, not burning, joining with a calm biological certainty that made nausea rise in her throat. Jared stared at their hands. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I can't tell where you stop. Claire pressed her forehead to his. Then stay with me until we can't tell. The residents around them began walking in slow circles around the obelisk. Their feet moved in perfect time. Their mouths opened and closed around words Claire could feel but not hear. Her fear began to drain away. That was the final horror. Not pain, not transformation. Peace. A vast, artificial peace spreading through her blood, smoothing every jagged edge of terror, grief, rage, and love into something easier to manage. She understood then why Dana had warned her. Don't let them make you calm. Jared looked at her with eyes that were no longer fully his. Are you afraid? He asked. Claire searched herself for the answer and found only quiet. No, she said. A tear slipped down her face. That's what scares me. The open eye in the sky widened, for one impossible second, Claire saw beyond it. Not a room, not a throne, not some candlelit chamber from a conspiracy fever dream, a boardroom, long black table, 12 empty chairs, white walls, men and women in immaculate suits standing behind glass, watching charts rise and fall across transparent screens. No chanting, no candles, no ancient robes, only signatures, projections, sealed authorizations, and a cracked white cylinder displayed in a glass case like a holy relic. Beneath it, words burned in sterile blue light. X33284. The world must be made ready to receive its true ownership. Then the vision collapsed. Claire felt Jared's hand vanish into hers, or hers into his. The distinction stopped mattering. The town square filled with white light, and the thing that had been Jared and Claire Teague lowered its head in perfect calm. Far below the community, beneath concrete, beneath false streets and artificial grass, beneath the medical language built to hide the older language, technicians worked in a clean underground freight bay. The all-white semi-truck had been repaired. Its cab was polished. Its trailer doors had been replaced. The interior had been washed until no blood, glass, or highway dust remained. New white cylinders were loaded into black cradles one by one. Each bore a small serial marking near the base. Most were not cracked. Not yet. A new driver stood beside the cab in a white shirt and dark tie. His face was calm. His eyes were empty in the disciplined way of someone who had surrendered long ago and mistaken the surrender for purpose. Dr. Stroud approached him and handed him a blank white card. He took it without looking down. "You understand the route?" she asked. "Yes." "You understand the freight?" "No." "Good." The driver climbed into the cab. A green light pulsed from the black case bolted to the passenger side floor. The underground door opened onto a tunnel that climbed slowly toward daylight. The white truck rolled forward. No logo, no company name, no hazard placards, no shipping papers, no destination anyone outside the route was allowed to remember. By late afternoon, it merged onto another interstate beneath another hard, colorless sky. Traffic was thin. The truck moved steadily in the right lane, patient, clean, forgettable. 3 vehicles behind it. A man in a dented red sedan leaned on his horn. And somewhere ahead, traffic was already beginning to slow.
If this transmission found you, subscribe before the next one does.